What would you do if someone told you that getting heavier could save your life? Not in a metaphorical sense. In the most literal, brutal calculation imaginable. Would you add 200 pounds of steel to your body if it meant surviving a fight? Would you accept being slower, less graceful, less elegant, if it meant you'd come home? Please subscribe to keep us going forward. June 19, 1944, over the Philippine Sea. An American pilot named Alexander Vratsiu is sitting behind half an inch of armor plate that makes his aircraft slower than the enemy. The Japanese Zero he's about to face can turn tighter, climb faster at low altitude, and moves through the sky like it's dancing. Vratsiu's F-6F Hellcat handles like a freight train by comparison. By the end of the day, Vratsiu will shoot down 6 Japanese aircraft. He'll land safely back on the USS Lexington with ammunition and fuel to spare. The Japanese pilots who faced him, most won't make it home. Not because they were less skilled. Many had 5 years of training versus Vratsiu's 6 months. Not because their planes were worse. The Zero was a masterpiece of engineering. They won't make it home because of a choice their engineers made in 1939. A calculation about weight and speed and perfection. The choice to remove the armor plate. By the end of the Pacific War, American Hellcats will destroy 5,600 Japanese aircraft while losing 300 of their own. A kill ratio of 19-1. The most lopsided air combat victory in modern warfare. But here's what makes this story fascinating. The Japanese Zero was objectively the better aircraft in 1941. Lighter, faster, more maneuverable. Flown by the best pilots in the world. It should have dominated the Pacific War. Instead, it got obliterated by a plane that was heavier, slower, and flown by pilots with a fraction of the training. This is the story of how a philosophy killed an air force, how 200 pounds of steel became a weapon more powerful than speed, and how the choice between perfection and survival determined who lived and who died in the skies over the Pacific. The 1901 kill ratio wasn't an accident. It was inevitable the moment 2 designers made opposite choices about a single piece of armor. December 7, 1941. Pearl Harbor burns, and through the smoke come silver ghosts that seem to defy physics. The Mitsubishi A6M-0, arguably the most sophisticated fighter aircraft in the world. They bank and dive with impossible agility, their wingtips carving air at angles American planes can't match. In cockpits barely wider than a man's shoulders, Japanese pilots sit surrounded by thin aluminum and sky. No armor plates protect their backs. No self-sealing fuel tanks cushion beneath their feet. They are samurai of the industrial age, stripped of everything but skill and the machine's purpose. The Zero emerged from an impossible design challenge. In 1937, the Imperial Japanese Navy demanded an aircraft that could fly 500 kilometers from its carrier, engage enemy fighters with superior maneuverability, and return home, all while exceeding 300 mph and carrying 2 20mm cannons. No fighter in existence could meet even half these requirements. Physics seemed to forbid it. Chief designer Jiro Horikoshi's answer was subtraction, while American and British designers added more armor, more guns, more fuel. He carved away. He eliminated protective armor entirely. Designed fuel tanks 60% lighter than American self-sealing models, but they'd burn like phosphorus if punctured. Used aluminum alloy so difficult to work with it added hundreds of hours to production time. Built wings absurdly large at 40 feet, but so precisely engineered the entire assembly weighed less than the armor protecting a single American pilot. The result was a katana in the sky. Beautiful, lethal, requiring a master's hand. And it worked. By mid-1942, the Zero established dominance from Pearl Harbor to Ceylon to Port Moresby. Allied pilots approached combat with fatalism bordering on paralysis. Intelligence reports describe American fighter pilots refusing to engage when outnumbered, breaking off even when holding altitude advantage, declaring that fighting a Zero one-on-one was suicide. Kill ratios from early Pacific combat, 12.1 in Japan's favor. In some engagements, 21. The Zero hadn't just achieved tactical superiority. It created a mythology of invincibility, that infected every briefing room from Darwin to Guadalcanal. Japanese pilots, many with 1,000+ hours before ever sitting in a Zero, believed they flew the ultimate expression of aerial warfare. They weren't entirely wrong. But there was a price to perfection through subtraction, and that price was written in the molecular structure of every aluminum panel, in the absence of every armor plate that might have saved a life, in every fuel line that would spray gasoline across hot engine components when punctured. The Zero was a weapon so refined it could cut through anything, but so light and sharp it would shatter against a sledgehammer. The sledgehammer was already being forged. June 1942. Grumman Iron Works, Bethpage, Long Island. The F-6F Hellcat prototype takes shape amid 8,000 workers laboring in shifts that blur day into night. Chief Engineer Bill Schwendler studies Pacific combat reports with pragmatic clarity. Japanese designers never applied. The numbers tell a brutal story beyond performance specs. Zero production, 900 aircraft annually from Mitsubishi, limited by fabrication complexity and skilled labor scarcity. American fighter production, climbing toward 3,000 monthly across multiple manufacturers. American pilot training, 20,000 graduates annually by 1943 versus under 1,500 Japanese naval aviators. American aluminum production, 3 million tons yearly. Japanese, under 200,000 tons. Schwendler's philosophy mirrors Horikoshi's in reverse. Where Horikoshi subtracted to achieve perfection, Schwendler adds, the Hellcat will be heavier, slower in turns, less responsive. Everything the Zero isn't. But it will carry armor plate protecting the pilot from behind, below, the sides. Self-sealing fuel tanks taking multiple hits and keep flying. A Pratt & Whitney R2800 producing 2,000 horsepower, nearly double the Zero's engine, reaching 380 mph in level flight. 6 M2 Browning 50 caliber machine guns, each firing 800 rounds per minute with kinetic energy that can saw a Zero in half. The genius lies in synthesis of philosophy. The Hellcat is built to be flown by pilots with 200 hours training, not 2,000. Controls are heavy and stable rather than featherlight. Nearly impossible to over-control, nearly impossible to stall, nearly impossible to accidentally overstress. In mock dogfights against captured Zeros at Patuxent River, American test pilots discover something revolutionary. The Hellcat can't match the Zero's turning radius, but it doesn't need to. With superior speed, climb rate, dive characteristics, and altitude performance, the Hellcat can dictate engagement terms. Boom and zoom. Dive from altitude, make high-speed gunnery pass, climb away before the Zero's legendary maneuverability matters. When Zero's 20mm cannon shells strike a Hellcat, the American plane frequently flies home. When Hellcat's 50 caliber rounds strike a Zero, the Japanese aircraft comes apart like paper. This isn't accident. It's the promise of that 200-pound armor plate. A promise that says, we value your survival over aircraft performance. Coming home matters more than being perfect. November 1942. First Hellcats enter combat. They're outmaneuvered in turning fights. Zero pilots, confident in their superior agility, close for traditional dogfights. But American pilots don't turn with them. They dive through formations at 400 mph, speed beyond what a Zero can safely achieve. The Japanese fighters' controls stiffen dangerously above 350 mph. Structural failures become likely above 400 mph. The Hellcat punches through like a stone through silk. November 11, 1943. Lieutenant Roy Rushing over Rabaul. His 4 Hellcats encounter 9 Zeros at 16,000 feet. 6 months earlier, this meant breaking off and running. Instead, Rushing dives, building speed to 400 mph. The Zeros turn to engage, executing signature tight spirals. The Hellcats don't turn with them. Rushing's 6 machine guns create a cone of destruction 6 feet wide, 50 caliber rounds per second, each weighing half an ounce, traveling 2,800 feet per second, arrive like horizontal thunderstorm. The Zero's engine tears from its mounts. The aircraft snap rolls and falls spinning. Elapsed time, 2 seconds. Third Zero latches onto Hellcat flown by Ensign Carl Brown. Perfect deflection shot. 20mm shells walk up Brown's fuselage from wingtip to cockpit. Shells punch through aluminum, through armor plate, through armored windscreen glass. Brown takes shrapnel in left arm and chest. His instrument panel explodes. The Hellcat shudders, drops a wing, then, impossibly, straightens out. Brown is alive. The armor behind his seat stopped fragments that would have severed his spine. Self-sealing tanks closed around punctures. The R-2800 engine, overbuilt with American excess, continues despite damaged accessories. Brown flies his wounded Hellcat 200 miles back to Essex, lands first pass despite no flaps and damaged tailhook, walks away from aircraft so ventilated it will never fly again. He's back in combat 2 weeks later. This scene repeats across the Pacific with grinding inevitability. October 1943, VF-5 off USS Yorktown. 11 confirmed 0 kills for 0 losses. November, VF-9 off Essex, 23.1. January 1944, strikes on truck. 93 Japanese aircraft destroyed for 4 American losses. The numbers accumulate like industrial mathematics. By end of 1943, Grumman delivers 350 Hellcats monthly. By mid-1944, over 600. Japanese Zero production struggles to maintain pre-war levels as American submarines strangle raw materials. Bauxite from Dutch East Indies, critical for aluminum, declines 70% between 1943 and 1944. New Zero pilots arrive at frontline units with barely 100 hours flight time. Some never practiced formation aerobatics. Many never fired guns at moving targets. In 1942, a Japanese pilot in a Zero represented 1,000 hours flight training, 5 years military education, artisanal manufacturing precision, refined metallurgical knowledge, maximizing limited materials. In 1944, that pilot is a teenager with 3 months training flying an aircraft whose quality control deteriorated to where wings sometimes fail during high-speed dives. An American pilot in a Hellcat represents 200 hours training, but arrives to find maintenance crews who can rebuild engines overnight, unlimited .50 caliber ammunition for gunnery practice, and logistics treating aircraft as semi-disposable assets. When a Hellcat is damaged beyond field repair, it's pushed overboard and replaced. Japanese mechanics hand fabricate replacement parts from salvaged metal, patch damaged aircraft with materials scavenged from wrecks, keep Zeros flying through improvisation bordering on miraculous. The symbolic center of this divide, the armor plate behind the pilot's seat. In the Zero, this plate doesn't exist. Horikoshi's calculations showed adding armor required strengthening entire rear fuselage structure. 140 pounds added weight. That weight would reduce climb rate, range, maneuverability. The absence wasn't oversight, but calculated gamble that superior agility would prevent enemy from achieving firing position where armor would matter. Samurai thinking, being hit represents failure. Armor is for those who expect mistakes. In the Hellcat, armor plate is nearly ½ inch thick, weighs over 200 pounds, extends from pilot's shoulders to below seat. Backed by self-sealing fuel tanks, surrounded by structural reinforcement, complemented by armored windscreen glass. The armor assumes pilots will make mistakes. That aircraft will be hit. That survival is more important than performance. It represents a democracy's calculation that citizen soldier life has value beyond tactical utility. The armor is a promise. We will protect you because you are valuable, not because you are perfect. June 19, 1944. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. This is where all threads reach crisis simultaneously. 10:30 a.m., radar aboard USS Lexington detects 70 aircraft approaching from west at 15,000 feet. Every available Hellcat in Task Force 58 launches, over 200 fighters in coordinated intercept. Japanese planners believed impossible given carrier operations challenges. The Americans have radar. Fighter directors aboard ships coordinating intercept with radio. Pilots who've flown 50 combat missions and rotated back to teach next generation, spreading tactical knowledge across entire force. The Japanese have courage, skill, and aircraft that are, by 1944 standards, obsolete. Alexander Vrasiu climbs to 21,000 feet. Watches Japanese formation approach like insect swarm against clouds. Counts them, 40, 50, 60. Feels not fear, but something closer to pity. His Hellcat carries 2,000 rounds, 50 caliber ammunition, enough for 30 sustained bursts, fuel for 3 hours combat, aircraft that can take punishment destroying a Zero and fly home. The Japanese pilots below have none of these advantages. Wratieu rolls into attack from sun, accelerating to 420 mph in near vertical dive. Speed is beyond anything Zero can safely achieve. He picks first target, Judy dive bomber at formation edge, opens fire at 400 yards. The convergence of 6 machine guns creates cone of destruction 6 feet wide. 50-50 caliber rounds per second arrive at target. The Judy's engine tears away from mounts. Aircraft snap rolls right, falls spinning toward ocean 5 miles below. Elapsed time, 2 seconds. Wratieu pulls out, climbs back using energy from pass, repeats. Second target, third, fourth. Each attack identical. High-speed dive, 2-second burst, kill. Japanese pilots attempt to turn into attacks, but he's already gone, climbing at rate Zeros can't match, setting up for another pass. 8 minutes, 6 Japanese aircraft destroyed. Wratieu lands back aboard Lexington with ammunition remaining, fuel to spare. Ship's photographer captures him in cockpit, 6 fingers raised, grinning like he just won turkey shoot at county fair. By day's end, Task Force 58 destroys over 300 Japanese aircraft for loss of 30 American planes, most to anti-aircraft fire, not aerial combat. The skill and experience represented by those lost Japanese pilots cannot be replaced. Industrial capacity to rebuild aircraft barely exists. Most critically, psychological foundation of Japanese air doctrine, belief that superior training and lighter aircraft could compensate for material disadvantage, collapses under weight of 18,050 caliber bullets expended per Japanese aircraft destroyed. The 19-to-1 kill ratio is not merely tactical victory. It's verdict on 2 visions of how nations wage war, how engineers solve problems, how cultures value human life. The Zero was masterpiece of engineering constraint, triumph of doing more with less, physical embodiment of Japanese ideal, perfection through elimination. Every unnecessary ounce removed, every component refined to essential function, every compromise rejected. The Zero was katana, beautiful, deadly, requiring master's hand. The Hellcat was Louisville Slugger, Detroit V8, Sherman tank with wings, overbuilt, overpowered, overgunned, overproduced. It represented culture believing problems solved by throwing resources at them. That survival mattered more than elegance. That good enough solution in overwhelming numbers trumps perfect solution in limited quantities. The Hellcat was built by nation that could afford to armor pilots, train replacements, treat complex machines as disposable assets. By late 1944, American carrier task forces operate with confidence unthinkable in 1942. Flight operations continue around the clock. Fighters launching and recovering in darkness using techniques Japanese forces, lacking radar and sophisticated navigation, cannot replicate. Pilot losses drop to rates allowing experienced aviators to complete full combat tours and rotate home, spreading knowledge through training pipeline, creating exponential improvement in force-wide capability. Zero pilots who remain face calculus of inevitable attrition. Every mission might be last. No rotation home exists. If they survive long enough, they'll be asked to fly aircraft into American ships in deliberate suicide attacks. Final admission that refined weapon of 1941 has become, by 1945, simply another explosive delivery system. Over 12,000 Hellcats produced by war's end. When hostilities cease, most simply scrapped, pushed into ocean or cut apart for raw materials. Not preserved as treasures because they're not treasures. They're tools, and American industry can build more whenever needed. This casual disposal of complex machines, each representing thousands of hours skilled labor, is ultimate expression of philosophy that built them. Hellcat is disposable not because it lacks value, but because system producing it has value to spare. In climate-controlled hangar at National Naval Aviation Museum in Pensacola, restored F-6F-5 Hellcat sits under carefully balanced lighting. Aircraft is empty of weapons, fuel, danger. Visitors walk around, peer into cockpit, read placards. Most never notice the armor plate behind pilot's seat, that thick slab of steel representing promise made and kept. But the armor remains, silent testimony to philosophy that valued protection over perfection, chose survival over elegance, believed bringing pilots home mattered more than building ultimate weapon. The Zero chased perfection and found obsolescence. The Hellcat accepted compromise and won a war. Freedom, it turns out, is not the lightest option. Democracy is not the most efficient system. Protection adds weight. Valuing individual lives creates complications. Armor plate slows you down. But in long calculus of industrial warfare, in mathematics of attrition and production, in brutal arithmetic of who replaces losses faster, abundance defeats elegance every time. Over thousands of square miles of Pacific waters, rusting Zero fragments lie scattered on coral reefs. Some shot down in combat, lightweight aluminum shattered by .50 caliber rounds. Others abandoned on island airstrips as American forces advanced, left to corrode because no fuel existed to fly them, no parts to repair them, no pilots to fly them. The 19-to-1 kill ratio is final accounting of two philosophies meeting in crucible of war. One created masterpiece. The other created thousands of good enough solutions and drowned the masterpiece in their number. History remembers both, but only one came home. The armor plate behind the Hellcat pilot's seat weighed 212 pounds. That weight made the aircraft slower in turns, reduced its climb rate, cut its range. By every measure of aerial elegance, it made the Hellcat worse. And it saved thousands of lives. But here's what the history books don't tell you about that armor plate decision. The debate inside Grumman Engineering in 1942 wasn't just about aircraft. It was about a fundamental question that still defines how we build everything from fighter jets to software to entire societies. Do you optimize for perfection or survival? Do you build the fastest system or the one that keeps working when things go wrong? Do you move fast and break things, or do you move carefully and bring everyone home? The Silicon Valley mantra, move fast and break things, is the Zero philosophy. Strip away everything unnecessary. Ship the minimum viable product. Fail fast. Optimize for performance above all else. It's elegant. It's efficient. It works brilliantly. Until it doesn't, and then catastrophically. The alternative is the Hellcat philosophy. Build in redundancy. Add safety margins. Accept being slower if it means being more durable. Value survival over optimization. It sounds boring. It feels heavy. But when the pressure comes, and the pressure always comes, it's the philosophy that brings people home. The story of what happened when modern tech companies tried to apply Zero philosophy to critical infrastructure. Why Boeing's 737 MAX became the Zero of commercial aviation, and how the same weight versus safety calculation from 1942 is being fought right now in AI development, self-driving cars, and social media algorithms. That's a different chapter. One that starts with a question. Are we building Zeros or Hellcats? And are we willing to add the armor plate before we find out the hard way? The 19-to-1 kill ratio wasn't about aircraft. It was about philosophy. And that fight never ended. It just moved to different skies.